Hey guys, and welcome back. Man, you really blew up last week's video. And looking over the comments, the general consensus was that Hidden should have countered the demonic consultation. But enough of that. This week was a cool game of what I think are some underrated commanders, and a few underrated cards that make an appearance as well. Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board. So, who brought what? Well, first off, we have Hidden, bringing a new deck to the table. Korvold is normally a food chain list, but Hidden decided to cut it and just run Underworld Breach. Korvold can gain insane amounts of value, because who doesn't like drawing cards off cracking fetches? And beating with a huge dragon isn't bad either. Next up is Jimmy, and normally this is where I tell you he's playing his $50 budget Estrid deck, linked in the corner. But today he has decided to play the upgraded list. And while the budget brew is very strong, not having a budget really can increase the power level of a deck. Third up is Lutz, piloting Tymna Malcolm. This artifact stax deck's goal is to lock down the board while whittling his opponents down, gaining advantage from his commanders connecting. He relies on rule of law effects to really hinder his opponents. And bringing up the rear, we have Fernando, who also brought a new list, Armix Kraum. This is a turbo naus deck that aims to combo as quickly as possible, and once you see the video, you'll know why this deck can win as fast as it does. But without further ado, let's get on to the gameplay. Hidden apparently kept a sketch hand as he starts off with a mana confluence into a mana crypt.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure if this hand is good. Sure, alright.
Still not done, he taps the crypt and casts a Soul Ring, before finishing it off with a Deathrite Shaman.
Terrible hand, Steve. Terrible hand.
Yeah.
I must say.
Oh my god.
You can put that
Feel
in
sick.
terrible hand.
Jimmy plays an Exotic Orchard and then taps it to cast an Urban Burgeoning. Now with the ability to always have one mana open, he passes the turn to Lutz. Lutz doesn't have a turn 1 play, but does suspiciously play an untapped Water Grave, taking 2. Fernando also has a quick turn 1. He simply plays a Flooded Strand. Hidden rolls for Crypt and doesn't take any damage. He plays a Windswept Heath as land and cracks it. And in response to the fetch, Lutz casts a Chain of Vapor, targeting the Shaman. He doesn't realize, however, that the land is already in Hidden's graveyard. So, in response, he taps the Elf and exiles the land to produce a red. The Elf is then bounced and Hidden finds a Bayou. Not wanting to waste the mana, he casts Korvold. It resolves and he sacrifices the tutored Bayou to the ETB to gain a counter and draw a card. Jimmy shocks in a Temple Guard and casts a Kenris Transformation. Hidden is sad as his dragon is turned into an elf, and Jimmy passes as he draws his card off the ETB. Lutz plays a Scalding Tarns. He sacrifices it to find a scrub land, but shortcuts as he casts a Dark Ritual to power out a Fellwar Stone. Using the tutored scrub land and the last of his floating black, he casts a Kite Sail Freebooter, and chooses to reveal Fernando's hand and take Jessica's will. Although not before seeing what gas Fernando has in hand.
Holy fuck.
Oh shit.
Jesus
And
Christ.
that is a hand. At his end step, Fernando cracks the Flooded Strand to find a tapped Steam Vents. Fernando plays an Underground Sea and starts off with a Dockside. He gains 5 treasures and uses 3 of them to cast a Praetor's Grasp. But Lutz responds with a miscast and Port lets the spell go.
Why so much hate, guys?
Fernando finishes his turn with a Grinding Station. Hidden wins the Crypt trigger and then plays a Forbidden Orchard as land. He decides to just empty his hand as he casts a Dark Ritual. He uses 1 of it to cast a Mana Vault, then exiles an Elvish Spirit Guide for a green and casts a Value Tainted Pact. He starts exiling cards until he hits a Peer into the Abyss, and at that moment he realizes he shouldn't have used all that black mana, and sadly has to keep going. He exiles a few other cards till he hits a Culling Ritual and decides it's good enough. He casts a ritual to wipe away the board and get his Korvold back. He gains a bunch of mana, but only can cast a Deathrite and heads to combat. He swings Korvold at Fernando, and on attack, he sacrifices the Elf to draw and put a counter on Korvold. Jimmy plays and cracks a Flooded Strand to grab a Tropical Island. He starts to rebuild with an Argothian Enchantress, and follows it up with a Carpet of Flowers, triggering the Enchantress to draw. He passes to his second main to activate the Carpet for 2 green, and casts a Fertile Grounds on the Temple Garden. He draws but has nothing else and passes it to Lutz. Lutz casts a Kraum and imprints a mana drain. He taps out to cast his commander Malcolm. Fernando finds a bloodstained mire off the top and cracks it to find a Badlands. He casts Armix while searching and is done after that. Hidden plays an Emergence Zone. He then taps his Orchard for mana and gives the Spirit to Fernando, which he uses to cast an Imperial Seal. Hidden finds a card and heads to combat. He continues his war with Fernando as Korvold swings at him, and he sacrifices the tap land to draw and gain a counter. On his second main, he casts a dockside of his own and gains 4 treasures. Hidden doesn't have enough for an ad nauseam and decides to save the treasure for a future turn. Jimmy activates the carpet and then plays and cracks a wooded foothills for a forest. He then casts and enchants a squirrel's nest on the tutored forest, drawing off the enchantress. He wants to keep ramping, so he casts his commander Estrid and +2 to untap his enchanted lands. Luckily, he only has one more card he wants to cast, that being a Rhystic Study. He draws and then passes it to Lutz. Lutz starts off with a Soul Ring and doesn't pay the tax. He does pay the tax on the Tymna though, and then swings Malcolm at Hidden. Boot takes it and Malcolm gives him a treasure and pays a life to draw off Tymna. The treasure doesn't last long though, as he uses it for Preordain, letting Jimmy draw. He scries both to the bottom and draws. He then plays and cracks a Flooded Strand to grab an Underground Sea and hands the turn to Fernando. Fernando casts a Jeska's Will, but fearing this would give him too much mana, Jimmy responds with a Fierce Guardianship to counter, and then Fernando heads to combat. He smacks Steve with Armix and is done after that. Hidden cracks a treasure for a green and draws from Korvold. While this is going on, Fernando laments about everyone always stopping him.
I don't know what I've done to you.
Draw and ramp.
Stopping
Oh, I missed
Jimmy with... Not Jimmy, well Jimmy too. Like with draw and ram. There's Steve with like a 8/8 dragonfly in ramp and draw. And I just cast the Jeska's Will. I don't even know if it's gonna do anything to me. And it gets countered. Like I just don't get it.
It's freaking me out.
It's a potential win card. I mean, these are big blowout cards.
I mean,
you know that it is.
Oh my god.
7 red mana, and you flip.
7 red mana, and you have Underworld Breach in your hand.
Then you fucking counter the Underworld Breach. What are you talking about?
You countered the Jeska's Will, not the Underworld Breach. You countered the Jeska's Will. You know that's the truth.
I disagree.
I feel good about that play.
Hidden casts a Finhorn Elves and then lets Jimmy draw. He cracks another treasure and draws, then playing a Nurturing Peatland. He then casts a Diabolic Intent, sacrificing the elf. Hidden lets Jimmy draw, while also triggering Korvold to draw himself. He then finally tutors out a card to hand. Hidden then heads to combat and debates whether or not he should take Fernando out or deal with Estrid. He decides to remove the Planeswalker and sacrifices the Dockside to draw. But holding priority, he casts a Noxious Revival to put the Culling Ritual back on top. Jimmy draws and the ritual goes back on top, which is then drawn. On his second main, Hidden sacrifices the 2 remaining treasure to draw 2 before wiping the board again with the Culling Ritual. Jimmy draws and the board wipe happens. Hidden gains 2 black and 4 green. He uses 3 of it to cast an Eternal Witness to grab the Dockside back to hand. He pays for the tax and then uses the last of his mana to cast an Elvish Mystic, still paying for the tax. On his upkeep, Jimmy casts a Mystical Tutor, but this time it's Fernando's turn to say no as he counters it with a Mental Misstep. Dismayed, Jimmy shocks in a Breeding Pool and then casts a Finale of Devastation where X equals 2. He finds a Gilded Drake, and on the ETB, Hidden responds with a Slaughter Pact to stop the swap.
Whoa, spicy AF.
But as a consolation prize, Jimmy draws off the Rhystic and has to discard his end step due to hand size. Lutz heads straight to combat and swings Malcolm at Hidden and Tymna at Fernando. He gains a treasure and trades the 2 life gained for 2 cards. Still on his second main, Lutz shocks in a Hallowed Fountain in his land and uses the treasure for a Cursed Totem. Jimmy draws again, but Lutz just wants to leave mana up and passes. Fernando starts with a spicy Hidden Gem of a card.
Sure. Why not? Fuck it. Top 3. I will cast a Mnemonic Betrayal.
So, Fernando starts by recasting all of the cheap mana rocks first. Mana Crypt gets 2 Soul Rings and then a Mana Vault. Due to the Betrayal letting him spend mana as if it was any color, this lets him start casting basically anything he wants. At this point, the night was getting late and we started overthinking it and complicating the play, before we realized Fernando could just cast the Dark Rituals and a Chrome Mox to cast Jimmy's Finale of Devastation for Thassa's Oracle, and, holding priority, he cast Hidden's Tainted Pact to win the game. Game review. Well, damn, I'm surprised I don't see Mnemonic Betrayal more often. I know it technically doesn't do much without a full grave, but this was turn 5 and it literally gave Fernando the win. Although luckily for him, Hidden decided to remove Estrid instead of killing him with commander damage. As for that decision, Hidden was hoping Fernando would be desperate enough to wheel, letting him refill on card advantage, because although Hidden had a fast start, he'd used up almost all the cards in his hand and was falling behind, even though it seemed like he was ahead. As for loots, the only real misplay was bouncing the Deathrite, not realizing Hidden could tap it for mana, or just not using it on the Korvold instead. But, question for the viewer, what's an underrated card that you think should see more play? Let me know in the comments down below. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I just wanted to let you know that we have a TCG affiliate link, and if you ever see a card you want to try or are inspired to brew something new, use our link when purchasing and we'll receive a small portion of the sale. This is a great way to support the channel, and if you enjoyed the gameplay, please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps us keep making videos. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.